Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I just want to talk. It's not an I want to talk video. It's not. This is a entirely different video than I've ever done. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to talk about where I've been. So, let's just get into that. And also if you hear any other noise in the background, it's just my cat. Live with it. I do. Um, so it's been about 2 years since my last video up until recently. So I kind of wanted to talk about where I've been and what I've been up to, in kind of my absence. Um, that's kind of typical for me. I would say because I tend to disappear a lot. Um, so that's kind of just where we're at with that. But I just want to explain more in depth of why I've been away. Because this time it's a little bit different than usual. Um, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it, process my own feelings, kind of get some, just kind of get some of it out there, Like, it's a hairy situation, I'll say that much already. But anyway, without further ado, I can kind of, how do you say, stalling? I'm stalling a little bit, but I'm gonna get through it as best I can. I am going to do my best not to cry, which is why I'm getting ready while I do all this. But anyway, without further ado, so a lot of you guys probably remember one of my last videos, which is deleted at this point because I'm kind of trying to forget about a lot of this stuff. Um, but a lot of you guys probably remember in one of my videos from about 2 years ago. At this point, it's actually almost 3. Um, I had mentioned something about the fact that I was getting married, and I don't quite recall exactly what I said or how I felt in that moment. I'm pretty sure I was excited for whatever reason. Um, but yeah, so that was a thing. Um, I did end up getting married. Um, and let's talk about why that failed. So I'm just gonna start this off by saying that had I known that any of this was going to occur, I don't, I wouldn't have done it. So like, maybe don't be one of those people that says something like that because you're prone to piss me off. Um, so let's just say that. Like, yeah, obviously, if I had seen any of this beforehand, I would have never gotten married or even been in the relationship, but such is life. So, anyway, so let's kind of just go back to the point in which I had gotten in this relationship, right? Um, so some parts of this are probably gonna make me seem a little sketchy. I honestly don't really give a shit at this point. Um, it wasn't my fault, and that's just how it is. So I had been dating this kid from high school that I knew in high school, and I had found him on Facebook, and he had been going through some hard times, and I had reached out to him, and I was like, hey, I used to be a hairstylist, maybe I could like offer you a haircut and like help you find a job, blah 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 blah. They came over, they talked. Next thing I know, we're together, and mind you, at this point, I had my own apartment, I had a cat, I had a full-time job. I was living. Not living well, but I was living about as best as I could. Um, so basically, this guy comes into my life, blah blah blah, and so I start spending a lot of time over at his house. And I end up meeting his twin, which I also knew in high school, so it wasn't odd for us to like all hang out or like all talk. Like they were close twins to the point where like it would be weird for them to not be talking or be together all the time, which in itself is kind of problematic, but whatever. Um, so I was dating him, hanging out with the twin, blah blah blah. I had problems with the first twin. They were verbally abusive. They would say just absolutely horrible things to me. And so we broke up. And there was a situation that I had noticed that I had picked up with on his twin, that he was not doing well. Like, he was definitely suffering mentally. And I was like, hey, are you alright? Like, you're definitely scaring a lot of people in the house. Um, and he pretty much, like, long story short, he told me that he liked me. And I, at that point, had absolutely no idea that that was even a thing. I kind of had maybe like an inkling, but like, okay, what am I gonna do about it? Like, I'm sorry, I'm with your brother. I don't know. Anyway, so he tells me, he's like, in a parallel universe, it would have been cool if it would have been you and me together. And how do I put this? I spent a lot of time with his twin, um, just like hanging out and like all that kind of stuff. Like, we knew each other very well, and I would say honestly a little bit like arguably better than I knew the person that I was dating, because we had spent more time together, because the person that I was with didn't do anything. So we had spent a lot of time together and blah blah blah, and like, I think that maybe I had developed feelings for the other twin without realizing it, and maybe that was kind of just like spewing off and like making them think that I liked them or something along those lines. Whatever, it doesn't really matter why it happened. The point is that it happened. I broke up with the original twin, and then once the original twin found out that we liked each other, that turned into a whole thing. So I ended up leaving the state because they had stalked me at my job and whatever, blah blah blah. So I ended up moving to Ohio, and my boyfriend at the time, which is the other twin, he came with me, and we lived in Toledo for about 2 years. Um, so I would say that when we moved to Toledo, that was pretty much when things started to go wrong, which they probably were wrong much before that, but I guess chose to ignore those signs. I don't know, I'm trying not to think about it too much. But anyway, so we moved out to Ohio, and we're living together, and we've got an apartment, blah blah blah. And then a few months in, we get engaged. And mind you, when I moved to Ohio, we didn't have a car. We had no way to go anywhere other than like public transport or cabs or whatever. So we didn't really do a lot of things. We didn't go out and do things. Which for me was a little bit of a problem, because like, I am someone that enjoys exploring the world and seeing new things and just experiencing life, and the person that I was with is absolutely the antithesis of that and would throw a fit anytime they really had to go anywhere. So that all kind of stopped. In relation to that, because we didn't have a car, we didn't have, I don't think in the entire time we were there, anyone came to our house to like spend time. I don't, like, if I were to ask my family members where I lived in Ohio, I don't think that they would be able to tell me without GPS. So it was just the two of us over there, and we're living as well as we can. And one day I'm at work, and I look at my phone, and there is a message on my phone that's like, it's from my boyfriend at the time, and he's basically saying, don't ever talk to me again, I'm leaving, like, you're a disgusting person, blah 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 blah. And I'm in the middle of work, right? I'm a manager at a clothing store, so I'm freaking the fuck out because I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I don't know what I did. So I'm just like freaking out. I go home early. I thought this was so serious that I went home early. And I went and talked to them, and they pretty much told me that while I was gone, while I was working and they weren't sitting, and they were just like, sitting doing nothing, they decided that they were going to use our joint computer to go through my emails from over 10 years ago from a previous partner that I had. And they apparently found some stuff in those emails that they didn't appreciate, and they blew it out of proportion, and that became one of the pinnacles of the beginning of violence in that relationship. Now, granted, the things that they were upset about were almost entirely made up in their head, and I had tried explaining that to them and like tried explaining further the situation as to like what they were reading and like giving the context essentially. They were not having it, and things were definitely weird past that point. Um at one point, probably in the first few months of us living there, my parents came to visit us for Christmas. And so we went out to brunch at this like egg place, and like, granted, mind you, I don't like eggs. I have a lot of food intolerances and stuff like that, and that's one of those things that gives me the ick, can't do it. No. And the place that we went was called Scramblers. um and I guess to give a little bit of backstory, my parents and I haven't always had the best relationship. It's always been a little bit strained. Um, that's just kind of how it's been. So for me, going to Scramblers was kind of like a smack in the face because it's like, you've kind of known since birth that I don't like eggs. And to pick a place that is like specifically dedicated to eggs is kind of crazy. I'm just gonna say that. Um, But anyway, long story short, we went into Scramblers, we had brunch, I had the pancakes, and everybody had a good old time, blah blah blah, celebrating the engagement, We come back home, my parents leave, and they're on their way back to Michigan. He shuts the door and he says, "If you talk to them again, I'm leaving. You cannot talk to them again." And so I'm kind of sitting there in shock because I'm blindsided essentially. I'm like, what happened? Like, what occurred to the point where you feel so strongly about this that I can't talk to my parents anymore? Um, that's crazy. But basically, he got so heated in that moment that I was like, okay, whatever, fine, I'm done. I'm never gonna talk to them again. Blah blah blah. And so for 2 years, I didn't, and he was the only person that I talked to. Um, and that was really hard because I've moved away, as I'm sure you probably recognized from my previous videos on my channel. I've moved away from home in the past, and it hasn't always been the best result, I guess you could say. So I did definitely struggle because I didn't have any friends or anyone to communicate with. I had no support. I had nothing, essentially, except for this person who was telling me what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. So I'm just kind of like dealing with all this stuff. They are, for the most part, not working unless I encourage them enough to get a job. And they don't keep it. They always cause some sort of issue at their job. Um, and so I'm the one that was keeping us afloat. We're struggling, and then like I'm also dealing with like all of the stuff that they're putting me through about these like emails, or like for instance, I went to the mall and I got stopped by some guy at a kiosk for hand cream, and I was on the phone with my partner at the time, and he heard the person in the background and they had a foreign accent, and apparently that is something to take offense of. And it was my fault because I let him touch my hand, when in reality he grabbed me off the side of the mall and was like, "Hey, let me to play." Yeah, whatever. Um, so like I got blamed for that, and I'm like going through all this stuff. It was hard, you know. Um, hmm, and then essentially the summer of 2024 came, and we were kind of at a standstill with life, I would say. We, at this point, I was in college full time, and he had just quit another job, as one does, apparently. Um, and we had no way to buy or pay for rent or groceries or anything, really. It was all just stuff that I was doing on the side that was paying for our stuff. And so he contacted his brother, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, you guys can just come right on back here, and everything's all good now. There's no beef. Just come on through. You guys can live right up back at the house again." Um, I did not want to do this because I was afraid of his brother and their dad, because their dad is crazy. Um, but lo and behold, I was in fact dragged back. Uh, in hindsight, I think it was a good thing because I don't think that I would be where I am right now had it not been for that. But I digress because I definitely, I definitely paid my dues to be here, is what I'll say. So we get back here, and so the first like month or so, I'm hiding in this house from the dad because the dad doesn't like me either. Why did I do this? Why? Anyway, the dad doesn't like me. I'm hiding because he doesn't know I'm there, because he doesn't want me there. I'm like sitting there hiding in laundry rooms for hours, like behind chairs, just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. And then they finally reveal that I'm there because there's like a big fight or whatever, blah blah blah. And then anything from that point is just like fine, I guess. I'm whatever. So I'm living there. But the thing is that the brother at this time is causing me issues. He's causing drama. He's like trying to yell at me and scream at me and like call me names, blah blah blah. And so I spend essentially the whole summer outside in one capacity or another. Um, that was when I started doing DoorDash, and so we were doing that a lot. And in a way, we were pretty much living in the car, except to go to sleep. And even then, I was keeping one eye open. So we're going through that whole thing, blah blah blah. I'm now at the school that I'm at now. I transferred over, and I'm still going to school and doing DoorDash and doing everything for their family, like keeping their house clean, making food, all this stuff. The issues are beginning to get heavier with my now husband at this time. And at this point, we had been married for a year. We got married on Mother's Day in 2024. And things are getting worse. So now not only is he talking about the emails, the guy with the hand cream, me bending over to tie my shoe in public in front of other people's, and if you like, there's just so many imaginary issues of things that I'm doing, and it's beginning to bubble up to the surface. Um, And then comes the pinnacle issue of being in the house with the brother and all the stuff. And about 4 months or so before this, it was I was on New Year's Eve. I was going to spend the day with my sister because that is another person that I was shut out from in my life. He did not want me to talk to any of my family really at all. It was a very rare treat for me to see my sister, and I'm sure many of you probably know my sister is my best friend in the entire world. She means more to me than a lot of things in this world. So for someone to say, "Hey, yeah, she's not gonna be a part of this anymore," is it's just not gonna work for me. So she's talking to me about this whole situation or whatever, because like she's had a couple of glimpses herself as to like what kind of person that he is and like the kind of things that he's starting to do. She's starting to get in on it. So I go back home on New Year's Eve and I'm talking to my husband about what we did and like the stuff that we saw and blah blah blah. And at this time we are watching the ball drop. It's like 11:55 and we're sitting there in the living room waiting just by ourselves. And I was telling him at the time about my sister's boyfriend. Because it was like one of the first times I ever met him, and so I was just talking to him about it, as you're supposed to be able to do. Um, all of a sudden, he got really upset with me, and he started screaming and saying that it was me trying to get attention from my sister's boyfriend because I was going like this, apparently, when I was talking about my sister's boyfriend, which apparently in his mind means that I was down to do my sister's boyfriend, and that's a huge problem. And he essentially told me to call my sister back and to get out, which these are things that have already happened in the past, and anytime before that I hadn't left when I definitely should have. But this point I was fed up because I had just gotten off talking to my sister about all this stuff, and then there it happens again. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just like, okay. And so I start calling my sister and I grab a bag and I pretty much like he's screaming at me and trying to get me not to go, and then the other people from the house are coming in and trying to like yell at me about whatever they want, really. And long story short, he like follows me out the door and tells me that I'm not allowed to leave, blah blah blah. And I left. And I started walking down the street on New Year's Eve as the ball was dropping in the pouring rain. And I got almost all the way to my sister's car because I didn't want to. I didn't want her to pull into the driveway because I didn't want anything to happen to her. Um, so I just kind of like walked further away. And I made it almost all the way there, and then cops stopped me because like, why the fuck you walking down New Year's Eve by yourself in the middle of the rain? But anyway, so did that, talked to the cops. They brought me to my sister, who was the one who called, and she took me in for a bit, and then a few days, I would say probably like 2 or 3 days after that, I was being essentially harassed, to come back home and things would be different. I'll go to therapy. I will go to CMH, which is community mental health, for like community mental health resources. Like he's basically saying like, I recognize that this is a problem and I want to get better for you. And I'm a dumbass. And so I decided that I was gonna go back. And to this day, that is one of the biggest regrets of my life because my life got so much worse going back. And so I go back and things are like okay ish for a couple months. And when I say okay-ish, I'm still struggling every day. I'm having trouble breathing. I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm scared to death to live, essentially. And so I'm trucking along. I'm going to school still, all this stuff, and it all kind of starts building up, and it's a little stressful. Uh, and so, dealing with all that, and then there was an incident that happened at the house with my ex slash his twin, and pretty much he tried to push me. No, he didn't try. He did. He pushed me down a hallway, and I was trying to separate myself, me and my husband at the time, from the situation and just step out into the garage. Just step out into the garage for a few minutes. They'll go away. We can be quiet. Things will be minutely tolerable, and we can just move on like every other time, right? No. So we step out, and they decide that they're going to lock the door behind us. And so we call the police, and they pretty much tell us that we can just take the car. We can just take the car. It's fine. And so we get in the car, and we sleep in the car and DoorDash until like 4 in the morning. I'm throwing up because I'm so nauseous over this whole thing. And this is this is part of the lore, the parts that you'll never see again. But when I was in that part of the relationship, I had lost over 100 pounds, and it was all due to stress. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought, I must be living better now. That's great. That's fucked up. Anyway, so we're living in the car. I'm going to school. I'm trying to find a job other than DoorDash because we're supposed to not be doing that or whatever. Anyway, so go through that whole thing. I'm a little stressed. It's allowed. Please don't. Just don't. So go through that whole thing. I'm sitting there sleeping at Cracker Barrel in the parking lot. Um, Terrified of these people, all of them at this point, but still sticking with my husband purely out of fear. So, long story short, there comes a point where he's living back in the house and I am sleeping in a Mustang for, I would say, maybe like a month or so. Pretty much like the last month of school, I was living in a Mustang or on the streets. One of the two. I did stay at my sister's for a couple weeks, but then everything kind of changed. But yeah, so went through all that, and my husband at this time goes in for his first consult, or like first time on the psych ward. Um, he basically had a blowout at my school, telling me that he was going to go out to the local river and kill himself. And I got really scared. And so I called the police, and they came and they talked to him and they convinced him to go get treatment at the psych ward. And so he went in, and that was when I was staying with my sister. And so he'd call me and we'd talk a little bit, but I did go there once to visit him in the like 7 days that he was there, and I felt really uncomfortable. It's almost like there is this cloud of uncomfortable air around the whole situation. Something about it just made me feel really uneasy. And so I was kind of trying to stay away from him because I was thinking I probably should have just left this relationship on New Year's Eve. But I didn't. And so I'm back at my sister's, and she's telling me that it's not going to be able to be a permanent thing. And then I'm gonna have to figure something out. And so I start kind of freaking out because I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna be homeless, homeless. Okay. Um, and so that's what I ended up doing because I was terrified to be anywhere near anybody in that house. Um, but when my husband got out of the hospital, he um he kept trying to get me to like talk to him, hang out with him, go and DoorDash with him, things that he knew that I would be interested in. Because I'm like, yeah, we kind of need money to live, bro. But anyway, so I'm like going to appointments with him to CMH, just like because he's asking me to for moral support or whatever. So I'm going, he's talking, he's lying to the people up. Like, he would say something and then they would look at me and I'd be like, because like they knew, they were able to pick that up. So I guess thank goodness for small miracles or something. Um, so he goes to the psych ward, goes through all that. They tell him he's got schizophrenia and he starts on medication. And I'm thinking, okay, so this is what I was hoping for this whole time. Like, I'm not trying to fail this relationship. Like, I'm interested in saving it to me because, like, this person is very special to me. And it's like, I wouldn't have married them if I wasn't interested in making it work. And so I was like, okay, this is a good step. They got on medication and like we're together now. I'm basically at this point their mother, their caregiver. Whatever way you want to slice it, it's still a pizza, you know. Um, so I'm now taking on that role while still being harassed and abused by the brother and their dad and whatever. Um, and then I go back to the house because he essentially makes it impossible for me not to. He drives up to the house and says, Stephanie's hiding in the car. She's been sleeping in the car for a month. And so apparently they were telling my husband at the time that if she doesn't come in the house, they were going to call the police and have me trespassed. Which is just top tier manipulation. Um, but I didn't feel like I had anything else that I could do, and so I went in, and again, one of the biggest regrets of my life. But this was like the beginning of the end, in my opinion. Um, so I was there. That was in May, and then June and July was so I started going to therapy in June, and I ended up getting help with CMH because he was getting help with CMH, and realistically, I've always struggled with things with my mental health, so it's not that far off base for me to be in therapy or any of that stuff. So whatever, I was like, maybe this could actually help. And I think it helped in a lot of different ways because it was the thing that helped me to get out of that relationship. Um and so a lot of it was through talking with my therapist and just like realizing how not okay I was with all of the things that were going on in my life and the way I was being treated. And then came down to the resolution. And so this was honestly crazy. I hope that no one in life ever has to go through this or any of the stuff that I went through. But I sorry. But this is gonna sound kind of fucked up, but I was at this point where I didn't know what else to do and escape from the situation. And I had been talking to my sister about leaving because like she had offered for me to leave in the past, and like she was concerned for me for sure. And she wanted to know what was going on, whatever, blah blah blah. And so I was talking to my sister and I told her, I was like, he's going off right now about something, and um pretty much I was like, if you let me stay with you, I will leave him out of my life and just move on. And she says yes, and I tell him, because like at this point he's asking me to stay with my sister based on the abuse from his family. Um and so I tell him that I'll talk to her and ask her, and I told him that she said yes, and immediately he started hitting himself and like beating himself up essentially. And so I was like, okay, that's it. You want to go to the hospital? And he said, yeah, I want to go. And so I call 911 and I explain to them what's going on. And like, I explain to them the realness of what's going on and like my plans and like all of that stuff. And so they come and get him. And I spend the entire evening with him in the ER waiting for him to get his admitted to the psych ward. And that whole time, it was like bursting a bubble filled with fear. I was very, very anxious because like I felt like I was breaking the law, which is so fucked up. I felt like I was breaking the law. I felt like I was doing like illegal things. Just absolutely, I felt horrible. But at the same time, in those moments, I remember smiling, talking about like what was going on. Like I was talking to him about like going to my sister's house, and I was smiling. And he brought that up, and I felt bad in the moment, but at the same time, looking back at it, I don't, because I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm happy. I'm so fucking happy to be getting out of this shit. I'm so fucking tired of this shit, and I'm glad that I recognized it essentially just in time. Because I fear that things would have gotten a lot worse for me had I continued to stay in that, because I had given so many chances thinking, oh, if they just get some help, things will get better. Um and they didn't, because they didn't care enough to make the changes in their life. And that was something that was hard for me to realize, but I did realize it, and I'm very much happier for it. So, such is life. So I get out and I stay with my sister for a little while, and then I find my own way, and I haven't looked back to it since, really. I still definitely have issues with my ex. We're still, technically, we're still married. I am planning to file for divorce this summer. Um, once I get everything kind of squared away, um, and everything. But, you know, as rough as life was during that time, I'm glad that I experienced it, and I'm glad that I got out of it so that I can recognize those signs in the future and understand that even if someone's not hitting you, it's still abuse. Whether it's verbal, emotional, mental, manipulation, and using your words is abuse. Um, like I said, whatever way you want to slice it, it's still a pizza. Um, so long story short, with all that, is that I just want you guys to know that I'm fine. well, I think fine is maybe an overstatement, considering everything that I've been through. Um, but I'm fine, you know? I'm trying my best to process through everything that's happened, and, um, I'm just trying to process through everything that's happened and move forward. Um, I'm very thankful for the life that I have now and the people that are in it. And if you ever feel like you're struggling, hopefully you know that you can talk to me. I am a safe place, and I will be here to talk to anybody that needs it. Um, I just wanted to make this video for myself and for anybody that's like me that's been in anything like this. I just want you to know that I'm so sorry for you, and I hope that you get the healing that you deserve. Anyway, I was not expecting to cry. um, but thank you so much if you did watch this video all the way through. It really does mean a lot to me. Um, and I hope you got something good out of it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. See you later. Bye.